Welcome back. So today I will be wrapping up my eyeshadow collection, just going over all of the other palettes that I don't quite have enough of any specific brand to do a brand exclusive. But you know, I didn't want to leave them out because a lot of these are palettes that I reach for frequently, and some of them also go on sale quite frequently, so I did want to include some of these brands that I highly suspect are going to show up in the Ulta semi-annual sale. So first up, just to sort of get them out of the way, I guess, I wanted to talk about my sticks or pot shadows. Well, I didn't actually include stick shadows because aside from this one very occasionally, I really don't use them. Like I have some Laura Mercier caviar sticks and things like that that are honestly in my eyeliner drawer and they just stay there permanently. I really never reach for those. I will occasionally reach for the items here, and I wanted to include them just to sort of talk about formula, and it's safe to say that none of these are at the top of the list in terms of how frequently I use them, but some more than others. So to jump right in, my favorite single here is probably the Glitter Puck, actually. This from About Face, it's super weird because it's cooling. I've never really had an eyeshadow that's cooling before, and you can use it anywhere. At my age, this is really only going on my eyes, but you know, I got it on sale and I'm happy that I have it. You know, I never really do one and dones, but if I'm traveling or something, I can definitely see reaching for this and feeling put together without little to no effort. You know, it's nice, you can sheer it out to be a topper or make it more opaque. You know, no fallout at all. It's just a really pretty formula. My second most used here are probably these Sephora singles. I know many people have said it, but don't sleep on Sephora eyeshadow. Not the singles. The palettes I have not been the biggest fan of, but their singles are beautiful. You know, I have a Sydney Gray shadow like this, some Pat McGrath shadows like this. It's not the most unique color, but the formula is phenomenal. I will say more often than not, they arrive broken. So maybe pick them up in person if you can. But, you know, I paid $2 for this one. These are on sale all the time. And this shimmer, I really don't reach for it only because of how messy it gets, because it broke, but these are fabulous. I absolutely recommend looking at those, especially if you're in store. The display can be a mess too, but the shadows themselves are really beautiful. So next I would say is probably the Victoria Beckham. This is in Honey. This is a color issue. I really like this formula. It's just a little too dark for me to use this all over my lid or in my inner corner. You know, I bought this secondhand from somebody that I knew, so I felt comfortable using it, and I wanted to play with the formula. The formula is great. It's just a color thing. I would definitely buy another one of those. The KVD Dazzle Stick. This was 50% off at Ulta. I would keep an eye out for KVD in the Ulta sale. it's basic. This isn't something, you know, if you have a big collection, you definitely have something that looks like this. But it's a fine stick. I don't know. I guess I really wouldn't want to recommend that. The rest of these I would not recommend for one reason or another, and that's including this. This Half Magic single. This also arrived broken. And this is a color issue, but also a little bit of a formula issue as well. It's very crumbly and it's not high octane. So I've tried to wear this as an inner corner and it becomes invisible. You know, I think they're constantly innovating, so that could easily change. But just wasn't the biggest fan of their eyeshadow formula. And then these babies. These, I bought every single one of them during an Ulta 50% off sale. I had these probably, God, I don't know, 10 years ago when they first came out. And I knew back then that they don't last, they dry out. You get, you know, I guess if you're using it every day, you get your money's worth. But if this is, you know, the kind of thing that you want to reach for occasionally, I'd say don't buy more than one because you'll never use it in time. You know, I did use all of these. I opened all of these, so they're already on their way out. I'm glad I didn't pay full price, but you know, I had really convinced myself that you know, these were going to be the inner corner pop. You know, they have the applicator that does that easily. So in theory, I don't know, it sounded good in theory. And I didn't buy them all at once. So, you know, at about $10 a pop, it wasn't the worst thing in the world, but after probably the first month or so owning them, I just forgot about them completely. So I would say, you know, if you think you'll have fun, just pick one shade, and I'm gonna try to include swatches so you can see the ones I have at least. You know, I'm glad that I have one of these, but the other four I think were definitely a waste. So that's how I feel about those. And then finally, the About Face eye paints. People love these. I have a matte one and I have two of the fractal shimmer formulas. These just didn't work for me. I'm gonna try to get some good swatches so you can see at least, you know, for a color reference, but I don't think I have any good pictures of them on my eyes because I was never able to use them. I found them to be way too drying, even these, you know, and I don't find the Stila is drying. I don't think I have any other eyeshadows that I feel that way about, including some eye primers that people can, you know, complain about them drying over time. These don't even dry over time. They were just like immediately too drying and then they would flake off. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I can't really figure out. I've even tried priming my eyes with moisturizer and a hydrating primer, and they still didn't work for me. So I am very convinced that that's user error, but that's why for me these are last on the list. But I certainly don't think that is the case for most people, and I know for a fact that these are going to be 50% off. So if I'm going to try to get this video up by tomorrow, but if I cannot, at the very least I will post swatches on Instagram. All right, so I'm coming in while I'm editing to add, you know, I originally left these out because they didn't really make the cut in terms of, you know, the palettes that live in the drawers that are, you know, easily accessible. That's how I sort of prioritize my makeup. But because these are on sale so frequently, I thought it would be good to include them, only because when they pop up, you know, in a sale from time to time, I know like that's when I got all of these. I think probably for 50% off or close to. And as you can see, after doing it once, it didn't stop me from buying other palettes. I just don't reach for these on a regular because the formula just doesn't quite live up to, you know, my expectation in terms of the color story, because I think these color stories are beautiful, but this is more similar, I would say. It's more pigmented than like K-beauty makeup for sure, but I don't know, the shimmers are just a little bit lacking and the mattes are just okay. So because of that, these all got downgraded. I would say if any of these color stories really speak to you, I don't think they're unusable. They're certainly not, but they're just not palettes that I would ever consider buying again. So, you know, that's just my personal preference. I think if you like lighter looks, this might be a fine purchase, but in case you see these, just wanted to throw that in there. So now I'm going to move, I'm gonna go least favorite to most favorite. So I'm gonna start with my extensive Viseart collection. I have 9 of the mini palettes all together, and I don't need 8 of them. It's not a good start. Although I will say these are some of the oldest shadows in my collection, so I feel like these were useful when I was first getting into makeup, because these mini palettes did not cost a lot. I got at least a few of them on sale, and I feel like it was nice to have this many shades in a really reliable formula. You know, it helped with curating looks because the color stories are, you know, well thought out, nicely put together. You know, they include all the contouring shades that I always look for, and, you know, none of these are bad. Anything in my collection that I really don't like, I did not even include. You know, I have some discontinued palettes, some old palettes, or some just like really awful palettes. Well, the really bad ones I think I threw out, but I'm not gonna waste people's time talking about those. So everything here is good. These were just not good for me because of use value. I really like the Viseart formula. I would buy from them again in a heartbeat, but their shimmers are just too subtle. You know, it's good on maturing eyes. They don't highlight texture. They're forgiving in that sense. So, you know, people who like subtle looks in general, I think, you know, would really appreciate these palettes. But because of the collection I have, I'm just never reaching for these. And you know, it really is a shame because none of them are bad. I keep hoping that eventually I have a niece or somebody that I could give these to before it's too late, before they're no good. But in the meantime, those just are what they are. Next, it's a Huda palette that I bought. I got this for $5 or $6. I've always made it a rule to never buy her eyeshadows that weren't the full palettes made in Italy, and this just sort of confirms why. Especially the shimmer formula, it's just not good. You know, it's just not a quality palette. The color story was cute enough that I thought, you know, why not just give it a try and see if I can make it work. It'd be nice to travel with, but it didn't work out. Next, I have Charlotte Tilbury. So, controversial opinion, but I just don't like her shadow formula. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's okay. It just doesn't stand out in any way. I think this reminds me of a lot of high-end palettes. A few of them that I really like. Some of the Tom Ford palettes, some YSL especially. Those palettes can be subtle and boring, but beautiful in that they blend seamlessly. They practically apply themselves. They have real pros about them. And this formula reminds me of that. But the shimmers are just too dull and dark. This, for quad, I don't like a lot of the color choices made are just not, you know, I was convinced that I would love this for the inner corner, but it's not light enough. It's not really a highlighting shade once I get it on my eye. And obviously all of her palettes are very different, and if somebody gifted me, especially one of her big palettes, I'm sure that I would use it. None of this is unusable, but I just was disappointed. You know, I tried occasionally to reach for these colors, but I always felt a little bruisey. And, you know, that's this quad. I think there's other quads, the Pillow Talk Dreams. I think there's other quads that I would like better. Fire Rose, for example. I wish I had that. But generally, I'm just not going to pay this amount of money for shadows that I don't think are worth the price at all. All right, I'm actually going to put the next three together because I don't really like any of them more than the other. Just genuinely, I couldn't decide. I stopped reaching for these because I can get them in other palettes and I just don't have to. But when my collection was smaller, I definitely did. The Lorac formula, to me, I think of similarly to Viseart, where they're solid. I know that, you know, I'm not gonna struggle at all to come up with a good look. The difference is these shimmers are great. You know, the Viseart shimmers really didn't work for me. These, on the other hand, absolutely do. They're just, they're sleepy. You know, Lorac is in trouble as a brand, I think, because of how sleepy they are, but these often come up in the Ulta sale. So I know for a fact that this will be up before the next, you know, the next week at least starts of that sale. So I would keep an eye out. They almost always have something, and I don't think you'd ever be mad picking one of these up. You know, they're nice to have for foundation to set up looks. These are the ones that, you know, each of these I've gotten during the Ulta sale. So these are the different color stories. The Forest, Soleil, and Noir. As you can see, they're neutral, they're basic, but they're beautiful. This one's even like a duochrome. It's a pink to gold shift. It's very pretty. These shimmers over here, they have a few different formulas in each of these palettes, which is another thing I like. So they have a more satin formula and a more high octane shimmer along with their mattes. So unlike most, you know, brands that have a shimmer formula and a matte formula, they have matte formulas, but then they have variations on shimmers. And I appreciate that they have all of those options. And yeah, none of these are bad. You know, if any of these color stories speak to you, and you, especially if you see them on sale, I always recommend these. They're just solid palettes. I have a face palette by them too that I like a lot. So next, the Rose Quartz palette. So this is the Good formula in Huda Beauty, the Made in Italy formula. I like this palette. You know, it's a good formula. I like the mattes. I like the shimmers. I think what it comes down to for me is just the color story not being my favorite on myself. And because of that, I don't reach for it, but it's really not for any reason other than that. So that's why it ranks where it does. One above is the New Nude. This, on the other hand, has some pressed glitters that I really don't like these. They're incredibly chunky, and yeah, those are not for me. But the rest of these tones work nice. I think that's why this one is above Rose Quartz, not because it's, you know, really better, just because the colors are slightly better for me. I think these shimmers are really pretty. You know, I've traveled with this palette a lot because I know I can get a nice look and I can knock it around and I'm not worried. I'm pretty sure I got this for 50% off. Like, I got it so much later than everybody else because I'm not sure if they were trying to sell off old stock or what the case was, but a bunch of these went on sale 50% off. So, you know, I would say just from a formula standpoint, these larger palettes are always a safe thing to get, and it comes down to the color story. All right, so then I have my Lorac Meraki palette, I think is how you say it. It's very beat up. It's one of my most loved. It's the only eyeshadow palette that I have that has pan, and like a considerable pan. For me, that's very exciting. There was a long time where this was my everyday palette, and it had everything I needed. I could travel with it. It's like old reliable, you know? I don't know. I like this formula. I'm sure it's getting up there in time. I think I've had it for at least 2 years, but it still performs well. And this is my #1 recommendation. If you ever see this 50% off at Ulta, it's a staple. You're just, you know, I think almost everyone can use a neutral palette, as long as they have, you know, the right shades, obviously. But it's just a nice fundamental palette to have. You know, I have a lot of shimmers that come with mattes that I don't like. So I reach for palettes like this all the time. Even though I never do matte looks, I always have matte palettes, and I definitely use them. And this is one of my favorites. Oh, speaking of matte palettes, then I have my favorite little Viseart matte, the Petite Neutral. I'm so glad that they came out with these smaller palettes because they're so much more affordable. You know, I love this. You know, I kind of feel like because I own this, I don't need any of the newer palettes that have come out. The Patrick Ta, the Makeup by Mario, you know, because I have this for a long time, I didn't buy other neutral palettes because I knew that I have no excuse when I own this. And the formula is great. You know, the only shade you can tell it's like completely in mint condition. You know, I don't reach for that. Orange is not my color, but this has gray and black. So this has those colors that, one of the reasons I wanted the new Makeup by Mario palette was for the cooler tones. And I feel like this has some of those. So they did a really good job just coming up with an all neutral matte palette that would be just so versatile. So, my favorite Viseart palette, for sure. Okay, then there's Patrick Ta. Oh gosh, okay. You can see my reflection. All right, I'm gonna talk about the one that I can still use. So, Major Dimension 1. I love this palette. This palette is what my makeup artist chose when I told her a little bit about myself and the fact that, you know, I was a really big Pat McGrath fan. I like makeup. So, you know, so many bridal makeup artists, you know, they focus so heavily on the natural look. And I'm like, I'm gonna look my best, you know, like, period. You know, I wasn't playing around with trying to look like I had no makeup on. So I really wanted just, you know, an impactful, tasteful look that would last all day. And she used a combination of Major Dimension 1 and 2. And this palette still works great. No complaints. I got it like 2 months after I got married. So I've only had this palette for, I don't know, 5 months, maybe almost 6. But, you know, as much as this one stayed intact and still works fine, the other one grew mold. I guess I'll check it and see if it's camera appropriate. Yeah, I don't think it'll make anybody sick. I did post pictures of this on my Instagram closer up, so you can sort of get one of these, it's like, this is the obvious one, but then these two down here, they have mold too. You just can't see it as much because I guess they're lighter colors. But anyway, I emailed the company. They tried to tell me that it was because it was cold, because it was winter time, and they said that the oils were separating and solidifying because of the cold temperatures. What they didn't know is that I live in South Florida, and even when it gets cold in Florida, it never gets cold in South Florida. We're always pretty much cut up. And I shouldn't say never. Yeah, okay, you know, we'll have some cold nights, but generally, the temperature being cold is not an issue here. And, you know, they just wouldn't admit it. You know, I've had products separate on me. I used to formulate my own cosmetics with preservatives, but, you know, I don't do that anymore, but I did used to make products, so I know what separation looks like. This ain't it. This is mold. And I really wish that they were honest. I'm sure that they can't be because they would be sued, but honestly, if I had money laying around, I would get it tested and prove to them that, you know, they should replace these palettes. They are supposed to, they say 6 month shelf life. First of all, I think that sucks. Because I have palettes from Pat McGrath that are like, I don't know, 10 years old. They're old and they are perfect. Not only do they not have mold, not even Pat McGrath. I have cheap drugstore palettes that cost dollars and they last forever, and they not only don't have mold, they still perform well. You know, 6 months for eyeshadow is crappy to begin with. But regardless, this happened after I had the palette for 3 or 4 months. So 3 or 4 months. I did not keep it in the bathroom. I kept it in my vanity in my dry room. You know, there's just no excuse. There's no excuse at all for this to happen. And as much as I feel like I shouldn't buy from them again, I just wouldn't buy another shimmer palette until I knew that it was safe. You know, like this palette was okay. So whatever difference there was between the two, I'm really not sure. You know, I considered buying their matte palette because it doesn't have any of the shimmers, and it seems like those are the only ones that have the issue. But regardless, this did not excite me. You know, they wouldn't, after contacting customer service, I think they might have replaced the palette if I bought it through them, but because I bought it at Sephora, they told me I had to deal with Sephora. Well, Sephora only returns things for 90 days. So I missed that window, and I guess because it hasn't been 6 months, you know, there's a chance. I haven't rushed back to do it because it's gonna happen again. You know, I want this palette because I, you know, wore it on my wedding day, but I'm not ready to blow another $70 or even exchange it and just, you know, use it for 2 months and then keep it in the fridge. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I was very disappointed that that actually happened to me. I thought I was gonna be one of the lucky ones, but I wasn't. All right, so my favorite palette among the, you know, middle tier palettes, I guess. These aren't my favorite or my least favorite, but these are my middle draw palettes, I guess, is the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Eyes. I don't use this as nearly as much as I know that I should, but because I like the matte formula so much, this is what made me want his new matte palette. The shimmers for me, they're toppers. They have this really unique thin formula that gives a wet effect. To me, that's what makes this special. It's similar to the topper formula in the new Natasha Denona I Need a New palette. The formula feels very similar to that. My biggest issue is that they hard pan, so they're hard to pick up, and it's really hard to build them up enough. So they don't work so well as toppers for me because it's not like I can just swipe that on and get the wet effect topper look without really having to work at it. So I feel like it's a formula issue. I think these palettes, some people had shades that had consistencies that the brand even said were not the way they were supposed to be. So, you know, I'm not sure everybody's palette are gonna have, it's really just these 3 toppers here. These 2 formula, they're just too dark, but you know, they perform fine. Yeah, this is my favorite mid-tier palette for sure. Why they didn't make this a permanent palette, I will never understand. I understand like the hype train and all that, but to me that's silly for a palette like this. It's not like holiday special edition. There's nothing about it that to me qualifies it to be a limited edition palette, but I don't make the rules. So, you know, I'm happy that I have it because I got to try the formulas, and that is going to help inform my purchases going forward from the brand. So it's valuable for multiple reasons. I was in the middle of editing when I realized that I had left these out. These got misplaced. They weren't with my other shadows, so I totally forgot they existed. But the good thing is they're actually fitting in top spot because these are both formulas that I reach for all the time. So they were actually with my eyeliners. You know, these Moondust shadows are super famous for a reason. This, you know, I did a whole series on Instagram about my favorite wet effect eyeshadows, and I really, like, that is something that, you know, will get me to buy an eyeshadow. Like, you know, don't let them know, but using that in the marketing terms will definitely get me to want to try it. It's a really fun topper. What's so versatile is that this can go with just about any look. It's just a really good color. And, you know, I know last holiday they came out with the Moondust palettes, and I'm actually glad that I didn't jump on those because, you know, I don't think they're all for me. You know, I think there might be one or two more of these that I would like, but the ones chosen for those palettes just, they really weren't the ones that I would have picked. So, you know, these do go on sale from time to time, so I might pick some more up, but for now I have, you know, Space Cowboy, and it's just great. It's the quintessential wet effect eyeshadow, and it's absolutely one of my all-time favorite. And then we have these Kaja bento boxes. Now, what I've learned about these is they're not all created equal. So some of the formulas are fantastic and some are not. I would say that my favorite is rose water. These actually are great for traveling. And, you know, the star of the show is definitely this topper. It's just for such a good price. It's a great formula. I don't use that one as much, but that's pretty. And, you know, great for travel, except, you know, I'm not going to use an all shimmer palette on its own. So for that reason, I got Smolder Season, and this one's nice. I thought this would be, you know, a better all-in-one because it includes some mattes. But again, it's only one matte. And, you know, this is a nice formula too, though. The matte formula is pretty nice. So anyway, the bento boxes are great, but Moondust, you know, I would definitely replace that if I lost it, just because it's become such a staple over the years, and it's a really great shadow. So that is everything for my eyeshadow collection. I'm really happy to have this wrapped up because I look forward to going into some of my other makeup products. Unlike these, I won't have to include B-roll with tons of swatches. I think that's really helpful for eyeshadows in particular, but I feel like with some of that stuff, if I'm comparing shades, I can do live swatches that are probably more useful, and I won't have to drag them out as long and compare everything, unless that is of interest. If anybody ever has two items they want me to compare, it would absolutely be my pleasure to do that. But next up, we're gonna do blush. I think before I get to that point, I'm going to try to do a Sephora wish list video because that sale is gonna be here before we know it, April 5th. So anyway, for tonight at least, that is it. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.